Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Lily Allen Duenas. Together we'll talk about the world of yoga and we'll talk to people from around the world. Before diving into the episode, I wanted to invite you to head on over to my website, wildyogatribe.com. I would really love for you to give it a look as I just launched a new website and I would love to hear what you think of it. Feel free to reach out on social media wherever makes the most sense for you. Also, if you're a longtime listener, I wanted to say thank you for your continued support. And if you feel called, I'd be honored if you left a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you tune into the show. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Namaste, family, and welcome back to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. Today, in honor of the 50th episode of the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast, I am excited to welcome Dariya Kolodiy onto the show today. She's a yoga teacher from Ukraine, and she is currently living, though, in Warsaw, Poland. She first began practicing yoga in 2004 and began teaching in 2016. And she's an avid Ashtanga practitioner, and she still is teaching yoga in Poland today. So I am so excited to celebrate the 50th episode, this huge milestone. We've been together for almost a full year now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining in. And thank you so much, Dariya, for being here today.
Thank you. Give me the chance to communicate and to explore about my yoga and my experience and about my country.
Thank you so much. So let's get started with the first question. How did yoga first come into your life? How did you first even hear about yoga?
The first time yoga happened to me in 2004 was not very popular in Ukraine and in Kiev. There was only 2 studios. I heard about yoga somewhere and decided to try it because sport always been in my life. And I really couldn't decide what exactly I like. I trained to basketball and some running and swimming, and I tried to for the first time yoga. I was surprised. I didn't seem to put much effort, but it was difficult for me. However, what surprised me the most was the calmness and harmony after the class. After that, I realized that this is what I like to do and decided to try further. For several years, I studied as a practitioner. So I go to the studio and studied asanas, the names in Sanskrit, began to be interested in pranayama, meditation. And for me, it was very interesting, made influence to our dosha. When I started doing that, after, I don't know, maybe 5 years to practice in a studio, like a general, ordinary practitioner, I started to interested and started to go to the various seminars and to the various instructors, trying to understand how asanas affect our body and, of course, our mind. And it was very interesting and surprised me that my social circle gradually began to change. I didn't notice even how many like-minded people appeared in my environment, and instruction from different yoga schools and different faiths became to my friends. Now I have a lot of friends with even different faiths. In Ukraine, I met a lot of different people. Yoga helped me to feel myself in different countries at home. For example, Ashtanga Salas. You can find Ashtanga Salas from all types of countries. When I've been living in Kazakhstan, I even found Ashtanga Salas in Almaty and practicing Ashtanga over here. And I practice in Hatha, and it's very support. When you came to another country, you came to the yoga studio and met people who thinking like you, who practice the same way of yoga or something like that, and you feel like a whole.
That's beautiful. So, Dariya, too, what is your definition of yoga? How do you define yoga?
Yoga gives ease of communication, ease of acceptance of ourselves and people around. And yoga helps me to accept the differences that as the people, you begin to relate differently to the difference of people and you accept their choice.
I love that. I love how yoga is a way to teach acceptance of others and of the self as a way to look at the world in different eyes, be more open, be more accepting. That's a lot of what I do here on the podcast, talking to people from everywhere. So it's really beautiful how you put it into words about how no matter where we're from, no matter where we are, no matter who we are, it's still yoga draws us together. Yoga brings us together and helps us to acknowledge, accept, and be present with other people. I love that. So, is there something that you feel like yoga has really taught you? Some lesson or some, challenge you've overcome? Is there anything you'd like to share about something that yoga has taught you?
I think the most important thing that yoga taught me is to accept myself and my loved one. Taught me to take some life problems and social problems more easily. And yoga gives me the understanding that if today it is difficult, it's normal. Tomorrow, different practice and different feeling on the mat. Maybe tomorrow it will be easy, maybe not. We can only feel it tomorrow. They feel through the body that something is disturbed because during the practice my body is clumped. I feel clumped one day, second day, and I thought it is very high stress, very high level of stress. And what is the mean? There is stress in my life, at my work, at my relations with, for example, my parents, relations with my sister or my friend, or maybe my husband. And I'm trying to think about it. I can notice it on my during my practice on the mat, and after that, I'm trying to think at what part of my life I have this stress and what I can do with it. Maybe I can pay more attention to meditation on pranayama, or maybe I can practice hardly. Yoga has helped and continues to help me cope with my psychological and life problems. Thanks to yoga, I can keep balance in life. It overloads the brain and renews the body.
I love that. It does. That yoga does unlock the brain, give the body back to us. Because I think we all can feel really disconnected from our bodies. We can just forget that we're sitting or we're standing, or we can ignore a pain that's in our back. For some people don't ignore it, they feel it, but we can ignore so much, the tension. We don't even realize we're grinding our teeth and our jaw is tight when we're working. It's these things that we're just not paying attention to. And yoga does give the body back. It draws our mind, our attention back into even the small parts, right? That's always a lot to learn in the body. And I think that the more you do yoga asana practice, the more sensitive you get throughout the whole day to where you are in space and what's happening to your body and what that means and what message it's trying to tell us. Do you agree?
Of course, absolutely. You can feel just, for example, now, after began this situation in Ukraine, I am practicing over here in Poland, and I feel how my muscle body is clamped, muscle, and it looks like it's not your body. It's not your body, but 1 month ago, for example, you feel it's flexible during your practice. You can do what you used to do before. And after this situation started, I stand with the problem that my body is not my body. Yoga, I'm worked out the situation. And now, of course, every practice is different, but my body, I give back my body.
Wow.
No.
And do you want to talk a little bit about the situation in Ukraine too? Do you want anything you'd like to share? Of course, I know I would think our listeners would be happy to hear, or not happy, but I think our listeners would be interested to hear from you about that.
I'm not very political people, and I'm not watching some TV and programs about war or something like that. But my husband was 2 months over there in Ukraine, and now my parents is living near the Kiev. And I just take some information from my relatives because my friend now in different countries thrown for the world. A lot of people here in Poland who is in France, and it's perfect that we can use smartphones and WhatsApp or something like that, and like you can communicate with your friends and your parents. But I call my mom every day and ask, it is quiet, it is quiet, and for me, very important how the in other countries to help. And yes, I'm living over here in Poland, but I see that Poland let more than 2 million people to come to their country and support of Ukrainian people. Moral support is very important because Poland people always, for example, ask me how I feel, how my parents are, how my husband is when he was over here in Kiev. And my husband come from Ukraine 10 days ago, and till he feels anxious. Every day I ask him, "It's better to you. How do you believe than you is in Poland?" And he told me no. And for three first days, I'm trying to help him to our flat where we live in more than 1 year, and see that no soldiers on the street. There are no tanks.
It's amazing that he went to Kiev and he fought. Is that what you're saying? He went for a couple months, right?
Yes. It was here in Poland, and he had a business trip for 3 days. He flew to the Kiev only for 3 days, from 21st of February till 24th, and the
return. He got stuck. Couldn't leave because the war had just started. Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, that's horrible timing. Ugh.
Yeah.
Wow. But he's back now with you. That's a blessing. He's home safe in Poland with you. And I know you have family still there.
Yes, they're near the Kiev. But at his region, there are no Russian. And the huge problem was is no electricity, no internet, and we can't communicate every day. It worries me.
Yeah, not knowing is the worst. Not being able to communicate and stay in touch. But I'm glad they're okay and that you're able to talk to them now. They do have more regular electricity and things.
Yes. Now it's okay, and the electricity is renewed, the internet, everything now it's okay. And every day I communicate with my mom and hope that it's finished. But I don't know how. It was some kind of miracle as for me, but I think it's finished soon. Because I am here in Poland, my sister in Thailand, my parents in Kiev, and my best friends in France, and all over the world.
Yes. And so, how about we talk about yoga in Ukraine? That's also something I like to talk to all of my guests about is what is yoga like in the country that they're from? And I know that given the war, given everything, of course things are different and will be different, but would you mind talking about what yoga was like before the war and when you were living there? I know you did a teacher training in Ukraine too, so hopefully
Yeah.
you don't mind sharing with us about that.
Because well, Ukraine had a huge number of yoga studios, ranging from classical Ashtanga yoga, everything his heart desires, and choose for himself his style. One could choose today or tomorrow. In a week, it can be fly yoga. If you wanted to relax, you could choose something calmer or just meditation. If a lot of problems or stress built up, then you could go to the straight practice and work out the stress on the mat. In addition, there was even hot yoga in Ukraine, and the soul, the right person in the studio could relax and make a lot of friends.
Amazing. And were the studios all over Ukraine or were they just mainly in Kiev or bigger cities too?
No, all over the Ukraine. I met a lot of instructors on the courses from little countries and even from some kind of not very little, not from little villages. And I don't know how this in English, urban village. And I met instructors from the urban village. And of course, in a few cities like Kharkov, Odessa, or Dnieper, Lvov, a lot of studios and numerous ways of yoga. For example, fly yoga in Hamak has a lot of friends and another instructors of fly yoga from another cities of Ukraine.
Got it. Okay. And how about we talk a little bit too just about your country as a whole, just about Ukraine. It's also something I like to do with my guests is ask them just to pretend that somebody hasn't heard much at all about their country. So, could you share with us more about Ukraine?
Ukraine has been developing very dramatically over the past 10 years. People in Ukraine love and appreciate freedom. They are sometimes harsh in their principles and statements, but very often a kind and sympathetic soul stands behind this. Ukrainians are always ready to help if necessary. Over the past decade, generations have changed a lot. Our country is developing very fast. After Ukraine received a visa-free entry in Europe, many people began to travel beyond the West and adopt all the good things they saw. Ukraine has beautiful nature. In Ukraine, you can see mountains, sea, steppes, and forests. You can travel a lot within the country. Look at the beauty of nature and get to know people and their way of life in other regions. Because the war, of course, domestic tourism has developed very much. Had ostrich farms, mini zoos, and people love and like animals. After the skirmish, there are no buildings, nothing. There was nothing. But also was, there are no place because the fight was over here. But you see that big birds are standing on their place. It's interesting. No people, no building, nothing, no cars. Everything is damaged. But this big birds and horses are standing. Before the war, there was a farm, and you can go over to the restaurant and eat some dish from eggs of this big bird, and you can spend the time on the yard and you can pet horses. But after the 2 days, there are nothing.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have guessed like ostriches is such a big thing in Ukraine. It's interesting to
Yes,
hear
a lot
these little
of farms.
things.
It's a lot of farms over here. It's popular, yes.
Wow. Thank you so much for giving us such an interesting look into Ukraine, too, about these things that I know we wouldn't have guessed or we wouldn't have thought. So, if our listeners do want to learn more about you or ask a question or get in touch, I would love for you to share your Instagram account with them so they know where to find you. And I'll also, of course, put a link in the show notes and on my website, wildyogatribe.com. But do you want to just tell them where to go?
I need to go to work over here because before it, I provide yoga through the internet to Ukrainian people, and now it's a lot of people trying to survive and not thinking about yoga. And I lost my work, and I working online from Warsaw to Ukrainian company, and I'm working like a general people from management top 5. Of course, I practicing yoga, trying to 3-4 times a week, and meditation helped me to keep new reality. And that's why I not very often to read messages, but I am trying to do it. That's why I answered you not even in 1 week because I'm working now.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry you're back in the office and that you're not able to do what you love, teach yoga. I'm sorry that's been an
It's okay, it's
effect.
life, not that situation. I don't know what will be in 1 week, or in 1 year, in one, I don't know, one student, and maybe in 1 month it's a life.
Yeah, it comes and it goes, and it's a good perspective to have that kind of
Yeah,
faith and trust.
I think life is not very serious thing. We have some problem. Tomorrow there are no problems. And today I work at the office, and in 1 year I'm back to teach yoga.
So thank you so much, Dariya, for joining me on the show today, and it's been such a joy to be with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. My conversation with Dariya Kolodiy, a yoga teacher from Ukraine, was so beautiful as we talked about how yoga helps give acceptance of others and of the self. I hope that this conversation made you realize that no matter where you go, a yoga studio and your yoga mat will always be a safe place, a sanctuary, and a place to come home to. Of course, we also talked about the war and how her family and life have been affected, but we did talk about Ukraine and yoga in Ukraine before the war as well. Thank you for tuning in to the Wild Yoga Tribe podcast. And I just wanted to let you all know, dear listeners, that on episode 50, that is today's episode, there will be a gap. I will not be producing episodes. I'm taking about 3 months off, and I'm going to be refocusing on guests that have already been on the show. So instead of producing an episode a week, you will notice a gap coming up here. So thank you. I'll see you all in the fall around the end of September, and I'll see you on social media. Keep an eye out on all the great things that will be happening there. We're doing Instagram Lives. We're going to be doing Reels, and we're going to have more conversations with the past 50 guests. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. As always, be well. Thank you for the gift of your attention today. If you feel called, please share this episode with someone who you think could benefit from it. Leaving a review would also be so appreciated. I also hope you can join me online on my website, wildyogatribe.com, or on social media. I would love to get to know you better. I would love to share with you and to hear your thoughts. Send me a DM, send me a note, get in touch. It would be great to hear from you. And as always, be well, dear one, be well.